All right, welcome everyone. We are getting the room open here. All right, LeMay, you made it. Great, awesome. Um, and LeMay, am I saying your name correct? First of all,
Lee May, yeah, that's perfect.
Yes. Okay,
Mhm.
all right. All right, really excited to have everyone here. Most of the agents that are joining us here are with the Super Agents Collaborative, part of the organization that I'm with. And it was one of those things where I realized what we're going to be talking about is assumable loans. And this is really, I think, for the next couple of years plus, is going to be the game changer in real estate. It already has been for a few of my clients, and I'll share. It was night and day difference in regards to how people were attracted to a property that was on the market with the 7.5% interest rate versus their attraction to the same property at 3.25% interest rate. And we'll talk about that here in just a minute. But we've really put together a group of people here that myself and Rick DeMario, we actually started talking about this a year ago because the writing was on the wall. And one of his partners on the wholesale side of lending, Jeffrey Nielsen, was someone that he introduced me to. And I'm really excited for you to hear what he has to share in regards to, the second mortgage aspect of it, because that's rare that you can find that. And then Lime Vera, she's with a new company that is going to be a household name when it comes to these assumable mortgages very soon. That company is Rome, it's ROAM. And I'm telling you, if you're doing assumables, Rome is going to be your best friend. And you'll hear why when she joins us. But I want to jump right in. We still have folks kind of coming in, but this is recorded, so they'll be able to catch the tail end of it. But I want to jump right in and really just kind of tell you why we're here and why I'm so excited about assumables and how this is going to be so helpful to our business, but it's going to be very helpful to sellers that are looking to sell, buyers that are looking to buy. And it's almost like we're going back in time to 2020 and 2021 with this. So let me just tell you a little bit about me before we jump in. So my background, obviously, you know me being in real estate, and I've got 22 years in real estate. And before that, I was a Gulf War veteran. Spent 26 years in law enforcement. In real estate since 2001, been a business owner since 1997, three-time best-selling author, a mindset and a brand awareness coach, and the founder of the Super Agents Collaborative real estate organization. And you can see, from the background that I have, it really that it part of why we here, because one of the things that I learned in um, with being a Gulf War veteran and serving during wartime and being a police officer and always having to think on your feet and being able to pivot and adjust. That's exactly what I saw with when the interest rates started going up in the early part of spring of 2022, that we were going to have to make a pivot. We're going to have to make some adjustments in regards to how we were doing business. And like I said, that's when Rick and I started having some conversations. I reached out to a ton of lenders, and I still reach out to lenders to find out, do you have anything in regards to assumable loans? And Guaranteed Rate Mortgage is the only company right now that I've come across that has a second mortgage that will help buyers in the situations that are looking at assumable. And you'll hear from Rick here shortly. But let's talk about understanding assumable. So first and foremost, I just want to, I know I probably have folks that are at different levels of what they understand about assumables that are here, but let's just kind of start from the beginning. So if you're someone that this is the first time you're hearing about it, let me just kind of share with you. An assumable loan allows a buyer to assume the mortgage of a seller, and you're essentially assuming the terms that they have, which includes the payment. And I'm going to give you an example. I have one that's closing in 2 weeks. We were on the market at the top of the market. We saw what the neighborhood had sold for. They actually priced theirs higher. And guess what? We got zero showings because they were trying to get buyers that were coming in at 7.5%, 8% to purchase this home, and it just wasn't happening. The moment that we changed it, they were VA, and the moment we changed it to a VA assumable after doing some checking into it and determining that we could, we got 3 offers the first weekend that we did that. So we went from 0 showings to multiple showings and multiple offers, and ended up being right at the asking price that they were at. So that in this market tells you how powerful assumables can be. And why is that? Because that buyer that won the contract, what they realize is, okay, at 586.5, which is the purchase price of this property, at 7.5 interest rate, we are at like $4,200 a month on a mortgage payment. But assuming this loan, we're at $2,900 a month. So, roughly $1,100, $1,200 per month that they're saving. Fortunately, these folks had only been in the house about a year and a half. So the margin between the amount for what they're assuming versus what the purchase price was something they had in cash that they could just pay. So all they have now is just that first mortgage at 3.25%, saving $1,100-$1,200 a month. That's huge. And I have one right now where we're saving like $1,400 per month. So that's why assumables are going to be so attractive for buyers. It's going to make a seller's home the most attractive in the neighborhood. And that's why I think it's so important that we know and understand how they work. Let me move some things around so I can click the slides here. All right, types of assumables. So one of the things I want you to understand is not every loan can be assumed, and not every one of these types can necessarily be assumed. So first and foremost, conventional loans cannot be assumed. As far as I've come across, there's no conventional loan that can be assumed. So the loans that can be assumed are if the current owner, the seller, they're under a FHA, USDA, or VA loan. Those can be assumed. And I'm going to definitely let Rick and Jeff kind of share more in regards to that part of it, because that's definitely their skill set when it comes to the loans. I will also tell you this. I have one right now that I'm doing that is a VA. Most people think, okay, if it's a VA, I got to have another veteran to assume the loan. And that's not the case. We actually have one right now where it's kind of a dire situation, and to a point where the veteran that is selling is willing to give up his rights for his VA loan. And I'm a veteran, and I know how important having those VA benefits are. But because of his situation, he said he's willing to relinquish those to the new buyer. The new buyer does not have veteran benefits. So in essence, they will be able to take over his 3.25% interest rate, and it's under the VA loan. How does that affect the seller? The seller will not have his VA benefits until those buyers that purchase his property do one of two things: either sell the property, without doing an assumable, that someone gets a new loan on it, or if they refi at some point out of the current loan that they had, at which point the VA benefits will go back to the seller at that point. It's one of those things I wouldn't necessarily advise, but it all depends on the situation. And I did tell this seller is not looking to buy for the next couple of years. So I did tell him the light at the end of the tunnel is if he waits 3 years, he then becomes a first-time home buyer and is qualified for first-time home buyer benefits. And honestly, there are some deals out there, some programs out there that are better than a VA loan. So he's kind of looking at it from that perspective as well. So again, we have to be the problem solver. We have to be able to take, whatever the current issue or situation is for a buyer or a seller, and see, how we can help them alleviate that. So let me move this over. All right, so just kind of some of the scenarios. I think I was just kind of giving you that exception on VA, but once again, just understanding when you're going into a listing appointment, maybe you're going to do just the standard traditional type of sale without doing an assumption. I would still have the conversation. Find out, number one, if they fall under those categories, FHA, VA, USDA. See if they fall under the categories. Give them the scenario, give them the options. Maybe you start just doing a regular traditional loan where you're just having a buyer come in and use their lender and get that higher interest rate. But if you're not seeing activity or you're not going under contract and they don't necessarily want to lower the price to a point where it causes them to get more activity, then the conversation around assuming may be worthwhile. And we're going to talk about what some of the things that the seller will need to do as well. So making up that difference in regards to the 100, let's say the scenario I gave here is you have a $400,000 assumable loan that can be assumed by a buyer, but the house is being sold at 500,000. Well, that's $100,000 right there in regards to equity for the seller, and the difference between the purchase and the assumption for the buyer that needs to be made up. It can be made up with cash. If you have a buyer that is in a situation where they sold the house themselves and they have the cash to cover it, then that's great. They can put that down. But that's where Rick and Jeff are going to come in for those folks that may not necessarily have the cash. Maybe they have 10% of the purchase price. And like I said, I'm going to let Jeff and Rick cover more on that. But that's where they're going to be able to come in to be able to do that second mortgage and show you how it's still going to be a tremendous savings for that buyer, because they're buying the bulk. The bulk of that home is still under the first mortgage at a much lower interest rate, and then they're going to have this small balance that's going to be at a different interest rate, but it's going to be a much smaller balance than what they're looking at. So we'll get into that here in just a moment. And then mortgage companies and assumable loan second mortgages. Like I said, there's very few of them out there that are doing this. So when Jeff and Rick put their phone numbers in the chat here and their email addresses, grab it. It's like gold, all right, because there's very few people or mortgage companies that can do what they're doing right now. So definitely get that information. Okay, so getting the assumption started. So let's say you've had the conversation, you have a seller that says, you know what, I like the idea of this, let's do it. There's a few things that you want to, number one, have them do on the front end. So first and foremost, we're going to identify that they are, one of those three different types of loans, FHA, VA, or USDA. At that point, they will need to call their lender, who they currently have their mortgage under, and make sure that lender will, even though it may be an FHA or a VA, we still have to confirm that particular lender that on that loan can be assumed. And if it can, in most cases, they have a department, they have a assumption department, and they're probably going to send you there. Some of the things that I'm asking my seller to get in regards to that, there's going to be transfer fees and different types of fees that come along with being able to assume the loan. Find out if they can get what those fees are. Find out if they can find out the time frame, because I think it's important for a buyer to know what type of time frame they're looking at. This is not a traditional loan where it's 30 days or less. This is a 60-day on the short end. For me, the shortest I've done is 60 days. So it's 60 days to 120 days. I just had one through Chaffa, where just yesterday I had my seller call to find out how long it was going to be. They said 120 days to 180 days, 4 to 6 months. So you want a buyer to know that going in. So that's MLS information that I'm putting down. And it also is just helpful for everyone, all parties involved, to know how long the process is going to be. I can tell you, if you have to wait 6 months, if you're in a position as a buyer to be able to do it, it's worth it. It's worth it to save, $1,000+ per month, as long as you're in the position to be able to do it. But like I said, you want to be able to have that information up front. And then we're going to talk in regards to Rome, because some of these things they're going to take off of your plate as a seller, and definitely off your plate as a buyer. So the buyer's role is, once we go under contract, once the property goes under contract, we want to make sure that the buyer is taking the steps that they need to. So I can tell you, for me, when I get an offer on one of my properties that's an assumable, I still want that buyer to be either pre-qualified or, even better, pre-approved. I don't want someone coming in saying, well, I'm going to have to do it through your lender anyway, so can I just start the process there? No, because it's a 4 to 6 month, or, depending, 4 to 6 month or 60 to 120-day process. I want to know going in that you stand a really good shot at qualifying for this. So making sure that you still get that pre-qual letter. Don't take in account that, well, they're going to have to get approved here anyway. So I think that's important, so you're not wasting time. And then just making sure, I think it's going to be very important, talk to the buyer's agent. If they are not up to speed on assumable loans, help them get up to speed. Introduce them to Lime at Rome, that will help them to navigate this whole process. Now, and she'll tell you there is a buyer's fee, but I keep going back to saving $1,000 per month. The buyer's fee that they have, it's worth it. So, and she'll talk more about that here in just a moment. All right. So again, kind of talk about the timelines, anywhere from I have to change this already, 160 to 180 days, I think, just depending on the lender. So, like I said, every scenario is not going to work for every buyer. It may not necessarily work for every seller, but just knowing what these options are and the ability to help your seller get more money and not have to drop the price as much, get under contract faster, is going to be a game changer. Like I said, the one that I've just found out is 120 to 180 days. We just changed that 2 days ago. Our showings are up like 200% on that. And what I'm doing right now is I'm talking to every agent that calls to show it and asking them, do you have an understanding of how assumables work? Let me tell you about this company that I'm starting to work with, that's going to be able to help you navigate this easier for your client. Those are the types of conversations that you want to have. And when you hear from Lime, you'll understand why you want to, Rome is going to be your best friend. All right, so I'm going to turn this over here to Rick. But I want you, if you want to hit that, if you're on your computer, just hit my QR code that has all my contact information if you don't have it already. And I am more than happy to talk to you, each and every one. I don't care if you're part of our organization or if you found this on Eventbrite. Why that is, I'm telling you why this is so important, that every agent at least understands how assumables work. I went to the Rome site and I was able to just kind of isolate Colorado. And this number still may be low, but I was able to find over 500 properties on their site that are, qualified for assumable, potentially qualified for assumable loans. I went to RE Colorado and looked at all of Colorado for anyone that is a part of RE Colorado, and did the same search, and I found 53. This is like 10% of the ones that Rome has were in RE Colorado. Now, the reason that is because RE Colorado requires the real estate agent to check a box that says qualified assumption. So what that tells me is there's a large amount of real estate agents that are not aware of assumable loans or how they work, or that their property, they're not even thinking from a perspective of this property I just listed may be a candidate for an assumable loan. So it's important that we educate as many people as possible. So I'm going to send this recording out. I would definitely suggest sharing it with other agents to get them up to speed on this, because I truly believe this is going to be a huge area that as real estate agents we're going to be able to work in very soon here. All right, with that being said, I'm going to stop the sharing on this, and I want to introduce again the gentleman I reached out to when I started thinking about assumables about a year ago, Rick DeMario. He's actually, we've done deals together, and he's actually my personal lender for the home that we live in now. And just an all-around good guy, super knowledgeable, good friend. And he's going to share with you, what guaranteed rate mortgage offers. And then he's going to share with you Jeffrey, who is the wholesaler that he works with in regards to that. Rick, you want to jump in there, sir?
Yeah, well, and again, thanks, Barry. Appreciate being on this call here. I'll keep this kind of short and sweet, just because obviously we want to leave it up for Jeffrey, Jeff, to kind of share kind of the great program he has to help on the assumable. So just for people to know, I'm a 23-year veteran of mortgage industry, not a veteran, not like Barry. So unfortunately, I don't have all the other skills that way, but I really enjoy kind of this collaboration that Barry and I have kind of talked about. And really my focus for you as agents and your clients, meaning buyers and sellers, is to help the industry go, is to help kind of light a fire of what is out there. And, what I've been doing with my time now as a mortgage lender, with guaranteed rate, is finding all the tools we have, and having an outlet like Jeffrey with a company to provide this second mortgage here, Barry, is just great for you and all the other agents on this call here. And, that's just the tip of the iceberg. We do all the temporary buy downs. We have everything else that can possibly be out there. So, again, I could probably spend, half an hour, which I'm not going to do for the folks here, but I did put in the chat my contact information, for both email, and also my personal cell phone. Please reach out to me at any time, because I think what I have ability to offer is to get your sellers to get the best out of their property, and to help those sellers maybe get pre-approved for the next home. But then also with all the other products I have, I just think we can kind of ignite, this whole industry, even though in light of these higher rates. So again, I'm not going to keep on chatting here. I do want to have a chance to introduce Jeffrey Nielsen. He is my counterpart, or my wholesaler, in regarding to help out the difference between the assumable price or a loan balance and the price. And, for anything that you're looking at doing, all my ask is that you have your client contact me, and then I will get the ball rolling. I will then feed that through Jeffrey as well too. So with that being said here, I'm going to turn this over to Jeffrey, and Jeff, go ahead and take it over.
Hey, thanks, Rick. I appreciate it. And thanks, Barry, for inviting me to run through this. I'm going to share my screen, and then there we go. All right, perfect. So hoping everyone can see that. If not, give me a quick nod. Otherwise, I'm just going to fire through it, make sure we're good. So basically,
hey, Jeff, I don't think we have, we don't see it.
Oh, really?
No.
Okay. Let me check and see why. There.
Yeah, got it.
Good. No, perfect. Thank you. All right, perfect. So basically, and again, just thanks for Barry and Rick, because what's happening right now is I'm getting so many calls, and there's really, people are not understanding, as Barry mentioned, how to do a deal like this, because most people just, I mean, you guys know, they don't have $100,000, $200,000 to put down. So our goal is to really fill that gap. And we just want to make sure that this is something that makes sense for your borrowers. And Rick, again, he's going to be your point of contact. He's going to run through this with you. He'll be able to talk to your clients and really help out. So that's why I just put assumable mortgage behind a second So here's just a quick introduction, just so you understand who I am, how we work. So Symmetry, basically, we're a wholesale lender. So what that means is we only work directly with companies like Guaranteed Rate. Like personally, you can call me anytime, but I can't work with your clients directly. That's why what Rick had mentioned, I made a note down here. Rick is partnered with us, Guaranteed Rate, and Rick is going to be your point of contact directly. He'll be answer any questions, offer any help with the second mortgage information. And basically what happens is Rick and his team facilitate that transaction between the borrower and Symmetry. Because what's happening is with Rome and these other, even Barry, that they're going to have the borrower work directly with the servicer, right? So that's really the key to this is Rick's not really dealing with the servicer. You know, in your traditional loan, Rick is going to do a first and a second. He's going to do the first through Guaranteed Rate. He's going to do the second through Symmetry. If we do, that's more of a jumbo option. Whereas in this case, what'll happen is he's really just dealing with me and the client. And then that way you guys are dealing with the servicer because Rick is not doing the first mortgage. So just to be totally clear, that's kind of how the assumables work. And we've been doing quite a few of these. So we have a pretty good background on what's working, what's not. So let me just jump into kind of the guidelines, how we look at these assumable. This will just give you some of our highlights. So when you're out talking to a client, or maybe you see something on MLS, you see, and you're like, hey, wait a minute, this is an FHA loan. Let's see if we can do an assumable on this. If, like Barry said, now you're getting more hits because you have more options. And I can tell you right now, I'm talking to a lot of people. People just don't know what they're doing on these assumables. So you guys already have the advantage just being here today because it's a huge benefit being able to fill that gap. So basically how it works with us, we will close simultaneously behind the assumable first. So all that means is that when you're closing with the servicer, the assumable first mortgage, we're going to close at the exact same time. It's basically considered a concurrent piggyback HELOC. Now, how it works is we can lend up to 89.99%. So basically, I'll just say 90% CLTV. So your buyer must have 10% down. So just keep that in mind. This isn't going to be like, you know, a traditional FHA where maybe they have, you know, 3% down, or a VA where sometimes they have 100% down. That does not work on an assumable because the assumable is what the assumable is. So here's a perfect example. I just closed one the other day. We had a $500,000 purchase price. The assumable loan was only $240,000. Well, I mean, you know, the client doesn't have $260,000 down. So what happened is Symmetry did that second mortgage up to 90%. We ended up doing a $210,000 HELOC behind that $240,000 second, and the borrower basically brought in the $50,000. They brought in the 10% down. So it's all based on purchase price. It's not based on the assumable. So if there's a purchase price of 500, they need 10% down. It doesn't matter what the assumable is. Now, if the assumable is more than that and it's close, that's fine. But for my situation, I'm really going to be your person you need when there's a huge down payment. Even like that first example Barry talked about, where it was a $400,000 assumable, $500,000 purchase price. Well, maybe your client doesn't have 100 grand. They only have 50. Well, perfect. I can come in and fill that $50,000 gap. So just so you're totally clear, that's how we're doing the assumables right now. Nice thing with my concurrent, we can actually go up to $750,000. So I did have one the other day where it was like $1 million purchase, but they had a $200,000 assumable. Now they were going to run it, but they decided to do my HELOC behind it for like 500,000 because what they were doing, they had a departing residence that they were selling, and then they were going to pay down my HELOC after the fact, and we're good with that because we don't have any prepayment penalties. So that's another nice option too, where they can come in and pay down that HELOC if they're selling on the back end, which happens a lot with some of these deals. So just keep that in mind, up to 750, and that's all the way to 90%. That's a pretty aggressive program. Now, just so you're aware, I'm not going to go into lending details and exactly how we underwrite because it's just too much minutia to deal with right now. And it, quite frankly, can be a little bit boring, but we basically follow Fannie Mae. It's all full doc based on Fannie Gets. So just keep that in mind. We'll follow LP. So that way, when you're looking at a file, your borrower, you're going to be like, look, can you qualify full doc? Yes. And that's where Rick comes in. He's great. He's going to run numbers for your borrowers, and he'll call me directly. we got qualifying worksheets we're going to work on together. So we make sure that you're not wasting your time, because the borrower doesn't qualify. That's where the conversation, at least on my end, and then you guys go back to the assumable. So we have that side figured out. Now, here's the biggest thing I've seen. We've at Symmetry, we've closed about 50% FHA assumables and 50% VA. We have not done any USDAs yet. So I don't know a lot about those. So I'm going to focus on the FHA VA, but if it's assumable, we can do it. So not worried about that. So here's the top 2 questions I'm getting on assumable loans. Make sure your servicer will allow a second mortgage behind their assumable, because believe it or not, I have had a few that have gone down to the wire where the servicer pulled out. So just be aware of that. And then, do they have any second mortgage requirements for a CLTV? So the big one on this is, I've had this question numerous times, and this comes from a lot of the VA assumables. They're asking if the second mortgage is assumable. It is not assumable. It does not have to be assumable. So just keep that in mind, because and I know it doesn't have to be assumable because we've closed probably a dozen plus VA loans and we're not assumable. So there are some overlays in the space that you just have to be aware of, so that you're not going in there just assuming that this servicer is going to do it, because they do have some overlays. So just keep that in mind. We did have one that went down to the wire. We literally had docs at closing, VA, and all of a sudden the VA underwriter came back to my LO and said, hey, you know, why I don't see this as an assumable second. So we actually reached out to the servicer and said, hey, it doesn't need to be assumable. And I think what people have to understand, this is so new to everybody. Even the servicers don't know. I talked to a servicer from Evergreen Mortgage in Vegas the other day, and they're figuring it out, right? So I think we just need to be open to questions, let them know, hey, this company's doing it. And I'm happy to talk to anybody. If you guys are having issues on this, I'm happy to reach out and just say, hey, here's how we're doing it. We've done it with PennyMac. We've done it with Freedom. We've done it with Loan Depot, ever. So I have a list of all the servicers that we've worked with, and we haven't had any issues. So just want to make sure we have that so that we don't have any of those issues down the road. Now, for submitting, when Rick submits, this is more of a piece for Rick, but just for you guys, so everybody on the real estate side knows, we cannot accept a file until the application has been started with the first mortgage assumable lender. And the reason that is, we've had a lot of these where they sit. Like Rick said, Barry said, it's like a 60 to 120 day process. So if we're sitting on a file too long, we have to deny it if we don't have a decision in 30 days. That's just RESPA. It's compliance. So we really need to make sure that application is working through the first mortgage lender before it's submitted to us. The good news is we close these things in 2 weeks. So we're fast. That's not something I'm worried about, but that way Rick can get it pre-qualified, make sure it works. First mortgage lender, typically we can get a 1003 from them just to verify that. And then really, as far as items required for submission, Rick and his team will be submitting. They send everything to Symmetry. They'll be working directly with the client. And then once we get down to the process, Rick will be working, or the borrower, with the servicer. This is the one time that we do need closing escrow information from the servicer, because we have to balance with them and wire funds, because we are closing simultaneously. So just keep that in mind as far as the actual logistics of how it works. And then just really final notes, and it sounds like these are even going longer. The ones we've had in our office have averaged about 60 days. It sounds like they're getting further and further out now, because I think they're getting busier. We're actually getting an uptick in some assumable volume as well. So word is getting out there. So 60 to 120, I'll just tell you, we've been at about 60. And then FHA, VA mortgages allowed. I didn't add USDA just because we haven't done it, but certainly we will do that. Closing in 8 to 10 business days. Just make sure your borrower, that 10% down is key. I just want to stress that, because it's not FHA or VA. We are a second mortgage lender. So I just don't want anyone to think, oh, it's an FHA, they can do a second to 97%. We cannot. It's to 89.99. So just so that's totally clear. Now, here's kind of an interesting one. It's just a quirky one. We allow non-occupant co-borrowers. So maybe you're showing a house to a young couple. They can afford the assumable. Maybe they can't add my second. Well, we're fine with non-occupant co-borrowers. So that's a little niche. If you say, hey, look, the second will add parents or uncle, aunt, whatever it is, then we can qualify them that way as well. And they don't have to be in the first mortgage. So that's just another piece to be aware of. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we've closed with quite a few servicers across the country. So we know this is a viable product and it's working really, really well right now. And then really last piece, this is my last slide. We are in about 34 states. So if any of the realtors you have are across the nation, anywhere in these red states here, this is where we're going to be. So like some of the states like Texas, we don't lend in Texas because HELOC laws, cash, they're really challenging. So there's a few states here we're not in, but most of the West Coast, East Coast, you can see we are in. And like you said, I can work with you. Rick will work with you directly, and we can help out any of your clients. So I'll leave it at that. And if there's any questions at the end, I'll stay on. But thank you again, everyone, for giving me some time to go over how this works on the second mortgage side.
All right. Thanks so much, Jeff. Man, that was, we've talked and had conversations around this, but that I think visually seeing it was even more powerful and just gets me excited all over again about being able to work with guaranteed rate and symmetry with this. We did have one question. I think Scott had a question in regards to the loan to value where it said C LTV. What does the C stand for?
So that's combined.
Okay.
So yep. So you're going to do your LTV as the first, and then the C is a combined LTV. So first and second combined.
Okay. All right. Makes sense.
And Barry, I just wanted to share real quickly. I just wanted to have Jeff go through his slides just for the audience out here. Is that it's imperative that if you're thinking if your borrowers are going to be looking at this, is that to have them do a pre-qualification. Again, there's no obligation, no cost to do this. And within my guaranteed rate, we do a soft pull. So it's not going to impact the credit, but I can vet everything through in regarding for the second mortgage side. And I also can provide just a quote for first mortgage. So I just wanted to have Jeff go through his slides and then just kind of reiterate the fact that if they are thinking of that, is to get me involved sooner than later as well too.
Okay, great.
Just on, oh, sorry, Barry. I just saw another
Jim.
question about the 10% down. So the 10% down is based on purchase price. So I know a lot of people think of second mortgages like the old school where we used to be 80-10-10. That doesn't really exist anymore. It's really you do the first mortgage, assume, and then I will fill that gap all the way up to 90%. And then your borrower comes in with 10%. So if it's a $500K, $500,000 purchase price, they have to come in with 50. And one thing I actually discussed this with Rick, I meant to mention this and I didn't put on the slides, but one thing that's really great about Symmetry, we do not verify assets. So you can use gift funds, you can use business funds, and I don't believe the Assumable verifies. They may, but from what I've been told, at least on my side, we haven't seen them really verifying much. So the beauty of this product is also we don't have to verify funds. So they can come in with funds from business and there's just not many overlays there. So just thought I'd add that piece.
Okay, that's great. All right. And then we're gonna, if you have more questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat. After Lee May goes, we'll go through those questions. But I definitely want to introduce this young lady and her company. I actually just got a call a couple of weeks ago on one of my properties that the seller actually told me they were under a conventional loan. And when Rome called me, they said, "Hey, we're looking at your property. We have a buyer that's interested, and we see that it qualifies for under Assumable." And I said, "Well, it doesn't because it's conventional." And they said, "Well, we're showing something different here." So I did my own research after talking to them and was able to determine it was an FHA loan. So again, and if you Google Rome, there's an amazing, or I think they may have been on like Good Morning America, some national show where they're sharing their program. But they have really just kind of hit the scenes here in Colorado. But I'm telling you, this is going to be a household name when it comes to assumables. And Limay and I have had the opportunity to talk. She's been super helpful. We talked on Thursday, and Saturday I received a lead from them. That's something I wasn't even expecting, that part of what they have to offer, but I'm already getting leads from them. So without any further ado, I want to turn this over to Limay, and she'll share more about Rome.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Barry. Yeah, I feel very lucky that we randomly cold called you on a Thursday and this led to this. So we were very lucky there. I have my teammates here. Joseph, if you could share your screen, we have a short um, kind of guide to working with Rome. Um, yeah, I honestly, everyone already answered some really great questions. So this makes my job easy. So you can think of us kind of as a tool for you throughout the assumption process. I get this question frequently from agents where it's like, do we replace the agent duties? Will agents still get their full commission? And the answer is unequivocally that, we don't replace agents in any way. In fact, we need to work alongside agents. And I will frequently tell buyers and sellers that I work with, we don't replace any of those agent functions. We're not going to be involved in the negotiation process, in the offer process. We are just here to really provide background support on the assumption process specifically. So I think all agents can think of us as sort of like a tool in the back pocket. And we will step in whenever you need to kind of take the hassle away from the assumption itself. For our services, we charge the buyer 1% of the purchase price, and that is paid to us with closing costs. But again, we're a tool for any agent that wants to use us, and we do not touch your commission. Okay, next slide. So I would think of Rome as a platform for, just cutting that monthly payment sometimes in half or more. I would think of our functions as a couple different buckets. So one is we help with discovery, and second, we help with coordination. So the reason why people aren't doing assumptions right now, a big reason why is there is no centralized platform to really search for assumptions except for the Rome map. And so if you take a look at our website with rome.com/maps, that's where you can take a look at homes that are financed with, as Barry had mentioned earlier, FHA and VA loans, which are assumable. So we have this map live. It's consistently updated and it populates with homes that have that assumable mortgage option. So that's a way that you can actually even find homes for your buyers. So let me just add that to the chat. And then second of all, we help with the coordination, right? So part of the reason that assumptions can be a unfamiliar process to some is that it involves multiple parties and it's slightly different from a conventional purchase. So for example, instead of the buyer originating a new loan with their own lender, they would be getting approved through the seller servicer in order to take over that seller's mortgage, right? And so because that process looks a little bit different, we're here to coordinate all parties. We file for what's called third-party authorization, as you guys might be familiar with the seller servicer. So that means that anytime they need to hop on a call, anytime they need paperwork to be filled out, anytime, we need to clarify the timeline and ask them, when is this going to close? What's the status of the file? We'll be here pretty much 24/7 to do that. With a couple of the transactions that I've personally worked on, sometimes the servicer wants to call in the middle of the day and the client has a day job. And we're going to be here to answer that call, to make sure the turnover is fast on our side, and to pretty much just push that assumption through as quickly as we can. So on the next slide, you'll see a little bit about the math behind assumable mortgages is Barry has already covered it incredibly, so I don't think I really need to go into this, but you have the list price, you have the remaining balance, and then the down payment is a function between the list price minus the remaining balance. That's what the buyer puts down. So in this scenario, if the list price is 500,000, the remaining balance is 450 grand, then that down payment looks like 50,000. Okay, so now I'm going to go a little bit into kind of how you can work with us on both the buyer side and the seller side. So on the buyer side, I would say this is pretty intuitive and has been explained very well already. We will be here to walk the buyer through and to get them that assumable, that incredibly low rate, let's say 2.5% instead of the market rate of, I think now 8%. So we'll help them get pre-screened. We'll answer any questions they have about qualifying for an FHA loan. And then we will navigate them through the process. And then on the next slide, the steps to kind of helping a buyer work with Rome. So first, the discovery. You can use our map to find homes with that FHA and VA financing. And then this is we're very open to working with you however works for you. So I'll send our email into this chat. But you can actually just send us an email with the information of a buyer that's interested in a property, and we'll do the coordination from there on. So we'll coordinate pre-offer, we'll coordinate with the listing agent, and then post-contract, we'll coordinate with the servicer. So what that looks like in step 2 is we'll reach out to the seller and the listing agent and get their questions answered too. So this is kind of what we did with Barry, right, with his property. We'll call the listing agent, we'll get it confirmed that it is in fact an assumable mortgage. We'll get those exact details figured out. So the buyer will want to see the exact remaining mortgage balance, the exact interest rate, the seller's current monthly payments. We'll get all that documentation from the seller to make sure that the buyer is confident moving forward with an offer. Then once there is a purchase agreement in place, that's when we start to coordinate with the servicer themselves. So that looks like is filing for third-party authorization, hopping on calls with the servicer, like Barry mentioned, ordering the assumptions package, making sure that both the buyer and the seller feel confident in all the paperwork that they're filling out. And then really, again, just pushing them on that timeline to close. I know it was mentioned earlier that this can be kind of a long process. And what I like to say is that we can help expedite that process just because you have one central channel and node of communication, right? As you can imagine, when the servicer is trying to communicate with the buyer, seller, and both agents, that turnaround time is just longer. But when you have one central party, making sure that everyone's kept on track, and also just here to, again, take calls from the servicer at basically any time of the day, you can really push that process to be faster. And so we hope to close every transaction in 60 days. That's not a promise because it does, depend on the capacity that each servicer has, but we're really looking at faster closing times when you have a central coordinator. On the next slide, you'll see why sell with Rome. As this was also touched upon, you really just expand your pool of buyers. And so when you're looking at buyers buying at 8% or 7% instead of at 3%, that's going to be considerably different. And so you're going to be able to pull multiple people off the sidelines, get higher offers, and sell faster. On the next, you'll see just kind of the steps to how you can sell with Rome. So we'll help you advertise the home, long story short. If you just want to send us an email, again, at agents@withrome with the listing information for any home you have that's FHA or VA financed, and you want to send us that information like interest rate, remaining mortgage balance, and then the seller's current payments, we can actually update our map to show those exact numbers. So if you take a look at our map, I'd sent the link into the chat. We have estimated numbers right now. So we have the estimated down payment, estimated interest rate, and then the current monthly payments. But if you can send us that exact information, we'll actually give you a check mark to show that it's verified, and that'll bump the home to the top of the map. That means for the hundreds of buyers that come through our map every day, your listing will be the first home that they see. And it'll also expedite the process because the buyer can have the confidence as soon as they see the home that this is going to be the exact interest rate and this is going to be the exact monthly payments they're assuming. We'll also help you advertise the home. So we'll send you an agent toolkit. This will include flyers, FAQs. You can use these to stock your open houses. And then we'll also help to pre-screen buyers for you. So buyers will have many questions about the assumption. You can basically connect us with them, and we will make sure that they are pre-screened, that they have that FHA pre-qualification, and that they have the right down payment available to cash out the seller's equity. Basically, just make sure that everything's in place for that purchase agreement. Finally, just like I had mentioned previously, we will coordinate with the servicer until close, and we will cut your workload. You guys are out there selling homes and helping people buy homes, and we'll be here to take the calls from the servicer. And so that will significantly, lighten your workload, expedite the process, and we'll make sure we get a seamless close. I'm not even going to go into this because you guys did an incredible job explaining this already. But second liens are definitely an option for, buyers who want to close that cash gap. I will say we're not a lender, so we're agnostic as to whether or not people take out a second lien. We don't make any money either way from people taking out second liens or putting that amount down in cash, but that is a really important option for people who, let's say, want to assume a loan of 300,000, but the list price is 500,000, and they need that extra 100,000. Second lien is a good option for them, just to cover that gap. But that's already been explained very well. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Would love to work with any of you guys on any buyers or sellers that you have. Again, you can have your buyer or seller fill out our form on our website, but a faster way to get straight through to us, because we're experiencing very high demand, is just to email agents@withrome.com. We're also building out a preferred agent referral program right now. And this is for agents that we're getting 90% unrepresented buyers and sellers. These are people who were not in the market to buy or sell until they realized that, they could have this assumable mortgage. And so we want to refer them over to agents that we really trust and that are familiar with the process and that are going to give our buyers a great experience. So Barry is one of our preferred partners right now. That means that anytime we get an unrepresented buyer, if they are, within the markets that he's serving, we'll send them over to him and we'll work alongside him to make sure that buyer gets that assumption. And so right now, I'd like to say that how many of you are on this call? There's a good amount of you on this call. I can send out more information about this afterwards, or you can email agents@withrome if that's something that you would be interested in, and we can hop on a call and we can talk about how we can make that work, because we are building out that referral pipeline, and yeah, would love for you guys to be a part of it. That's pretty much it from me, but any questions, feel free to put it in the chat or send me an email afterwards.
All right, Lee May, thank you so much for sharing that. That was, again, is great to just hear it again. I did have a quick question for you. So I've been kind of playing around on the Rome website, the maps. And so, for instance, my property that is on there, I noticed that it says $1,800 for the mortgage payment, which is probably just principal and interest. Are you not including taxes and insurance? Is that safe to say?
Yeah, that's right. That's principal and interest.
Okay. All right, great. And for me, when I looked at it, I mean, it's like a $550,000 house. It said 1,800, but in reality, it's 2,700 is what their mortgage payment is. But when a buyer looks at that and they understand, well, the same house at 8%, I'm looking at 4,300 a month. It's a huge savings. So like I said, that is something that you want to just be able to share as agents. You want to be able to share this with your buyers. I would definitely suggest just sending them a message at the agentswithrome.com, getting that agent toolkit, and then becoming one of those referral partners for them. Like I said, I talked to LeMay on Thursday, had a referral coming on Saturday. So it's a great opportunity. I think they just hit Colorado within the month or so. So it's brand new, and you got the opportunity to be first and foremost. I see, I don't know if Scott is still here. Yeah, Scott, what state are you in, Scott?
Confusion, state of confusion. No, Washington, Seattle area.
All right. LeMay, are you in Washington, or are you planning to move into that area anytime soon?
We're definitely expanding. I'll keep you guys posted. I'm not really sure what the next states are, but not currently operating there.
Okay. All right. All right. I don't have any other questions. Anyone else have any questions for anyone that was on the panel here?
I did actually. So Rome is the company that will take VA and FHA, and then because you have to have that 10%, then you can get a second mortgage to cover that. Am I understanding that correctly? Like if there's a gap, or because they're taking the remainder of the loan and then they're assuming it, but they're assuming it through Rome, right?
No. So I want you to look at Rome as solely a transaction coordination company for assumables. So if you have a transaction coordinator now, you think about it, your TC, they don't do loans, they don't do negotiations, they don't do any of those things. but they take a lot off of your plate.
Okay.
And that's really what they're doing. So Jeff and Rick are on that second mortgage piece. So Rick is with Guaranteed Rate Mortgage. Jeff is with Symmetry, which is the wholesaler. So as Jeff mentioned, you would be working with Rick on the product that Jeff offers. And
Got
they're
it.
the ones that cover that second.
Okay, got it.
All right, and Lee May, I just wanted to make sure because I may have missed it when you were saying it, but there is that 1% that is given to the buyer as that's basically where Rome gets paid. So 1% of the purchase price is a buyer fee. I did want to know, and I'm assuming it probably can be like a seller concession that can be paid by the seller, all or part of it, through a request on the contract. Is that correct?
Yeah, the 1%, we charge the buyer the 1%, but that can be negotiated also between the listing agent, the buyer agent. We just pretty much strictly stay out of the negotiations.
Mhm.
But yeah, that can be negotiated.
Okay. All right. Great. Great. Go ahead, Scott.
I saw on one of your slides there, there was a certain rate, assuming everything's, legit with assumable. I'm not a lender, obviously, but it looked like that through this program, they could get a better rate on the assumable than what the current assumable. I guess I saw rates with Rome and rates other places were higher. I'm trying to understand that little piece.
No, so that side was just comparing the market rate versus the assumable rate. So it's just originating a new loan versus getting an assumable loan. We can't change the rates of the assumable loans. Those are fixed rate 30-year mortgages, but we're just helping people discover and then coordinate the assumption of that lower rate.
Well, even if it costs them 1% or 2% above the assumable rate, they're still killing the market rate. So
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, even with the blended rate of taking out a second lien, it's still going to be considerably lower than the market rate.
Barry did a good job explaining this yesterday on our agent collective call. So I kind of got a little bit of a briefing, but I wanted to jump on to get a little more because I have a good guaranteed rate lender right here in Everett area, but I don't see that you're servicing Washington State is what I thought I just heard. Maybe not.
Yeah.
I know guaranteed rates here, but
Yeah, guaranteed rate is there, but Rome. So again, it's kind of two different components. Rome. I look at it as they're the Advil because you have less headaches. Because I'm telling you, right now, I'm dealing with what Rome does. I'm the one that's doing it. I'm the one that's calling on my seller's behalf, and I have authorization to talk on their behalf with the lenders. And I'm telling you, on the service provider piece, it's been a nightmare in some instances. And Rome takes over that. So they take over that transaction coordination piece from that perspective. Guaranteed rate, yeah, if they're in Washington, you can do assumables and you can have them, do that second HELOC. So you're equipped to be able to move forward with pretty much doing everything. It's just that you as the agent are probably going to be pretty involved until Rome or some other company should be in Washington State that assist you with that.
well, if you want to push Washington State, I'll get you in front of a bunch of people. LeMay.
I might take you up on that. And
Well,
also,
we've got a
just
group
to,
of 40 just with our own group here in EXP in Washington. So, and it's
that's
growing
awesome.
quickly. So,
Yeah, and even just to even clarify kind of how we're helping agents, like how we would have helped Barry in that transaction. The few that I've worked on personally, a lot of it is even just staying on hold with the servicer. It's hours on hold just to check the status of the profile and to ask for an update for the close of escrow. And so again, we're just taking all that work off of you as the agent, and off of the buyer and the seller, and just making your life easier and saving your time.
well, with the current market, any agent that's working is looking for any avenue and every avenue to find deals, whether it's on a buyer or listing side. So just having a product or an availability like this is just going to put you up a little bit higher if you're out marketing that kind of stuff. So yeah, we can talk about Washington if you want.
All right.
Awesome.
Okay, well,
Scott.
if we don't have any other questions, we're going to go ahead and sign this off. I hope each and every one of you that were here, this was helpful. I'm telling you, continue to learn about this. Reach out to me. Reach out. Hopefully, you got everyone's information here. Reach out to LeMay, Jeff, Rick, and just become a master at this, because I truly believe for the next 2+ years, this is going to be a big part of what we do. Because I go back to the short sale days, and 80% of my business was short sale. And if I didn't learn how to do it, I wasn't going to be doing business. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot of that with this assumable side as well. So thanks everyone for being here. Jeff, Rick, LeMay, if you guys don't mind just hanging on for a second, I want to just kind of cover some other things for future reference.
I have a quick question for Rick. Were you in Kirkland about a month or a month and a half ago at the Kirkland Arts Center speaking?
I was not.
Oh, there's another Rick that spoke that was a mortgage lender, and I forgot his last name. Anyway, you look similar. He was a military guy too.
All right. All right, guys.